Hello and welcome to episode 40 of When the Flames Go Up, the ATFC podcast. The Big 40. Who would have thought it? Tonight's episode centres on the 2-2 draw away at Gateshead, moving on to preview Altrincham at home at the weekend, before a little bit of a look ahead to the FA Trophy after the draw was made, as we record, earlier today. So, get the thoughts of Joe, Julian and Guy on the pod. Enjoy the episode. If you've got any questions or comments, send them to atfcpodcast@gmail.com. That's all from me. Up the shots. So, Aldershot come back from Gateshead away at the weekend with 1 point to show for it in a 2-2 draw. Shots going ahead through Barrett in the first half, pegged back by Osseini, and then Callum Whelan made it 2-1 on the 34th minute. So we went into the break 2-1 down. And then Jack Barham finished off a nice move to make it 2-2 in the 56th minute. And that's how it stayed for the remainder of the game. I'm going to come to Joe first because he was up at the GIS, the Gateshead International Stadium, at the weekend. First of all, you're going to have to tell us a bit about your trip because it was mad. And then how did you see the performance?
Yeah, thanks, Will. It was quite an amusing one. Me and my dad a couple of months ago spotted that we've obviously never been to Gateshead and that we can fly to Newcastle quite cheaply. I think if I typed in my home address, which is near Exeter, would have been about pushing a 9-hour drive without stops to get there. So we managed to leave near Exeter at about 9:30 on Saturday morning, and we were in the ground for about 1:30. Which is pretty incredible. Quite a unique experience. Wish I could do it every week, but unfortunately Bristol doesn't fly to places like Wealdstone or Halifax. So maybe there's a market there for non-league fans in the future. But it was a really good day out. A very, very strange place to watch football. I feel a lot of people say that it's a dreadful place to watch football, but I actually found it was quite an interesting. It's very rare you see the entire pitch, including sort of both corners. Because you're that far back. So it felt almost like watching, I don't know if you ever changed that camera angle on FIFA where you can see everything. I had a really good view of our defensive line at times, particularly in the last few minutes when Makoma was lining up to attack a set piece, and we could all see he was offside for about the third time in the match, and it was incredibly frustrating. But it was quite a unique viewpoint. I was really impressed with the way we played actually in the second half. The first half was quite worrying, and I think we really got away with it. The first half we were set up to counter. That was very, very clear with the way we'd lined up, but we invited them on far, far too much. And I think the 113 Shots fans that were there, I think were in shock when we managed to break away and go 1-0 up, and it was just sort of delirium in the away end at that point. And then obviously we weren't able to hold that lead, going to 2-1, sort of pegged it back to 2-2. It looked like we were the team that could actually go on and get something. And Gateshead looked, I think I'd almost settled for the point at that stage. And bar a few good defensive interceptions from Gateshead in the last sort of 10-15 minutes, it could well have been a good snatch and grab at the end. But overall reflection of the game, 2-2, I think was absolutely fair. It was definitely a classic cliche game of two halves, and a few players impressed. There's a lot more to the game, but we'll come to that later.
Nice, thank you very much. And I'm going to come to you next, Guy. You watched along on National League TV / DAZN. How did you see the game? And what about the first goal? Did you think it was offside? Perhaps tough for that camera angle.
Yeah, I mean, on the TV, difficult. I mean, I know you said it in the notes before we came on about whether or not it was offside. I didn't see it as that. No, for me, really, what I took from it was we were actually got back to scoring, and the thing that stood out for me was the triumvirate of Henry, Barham, and Barrett all working together. And so far as I can tell, the last time they played together, all three of them starting, was back in early September when we played Boston. Since then, we haven't had those three playing together, and they seem to have somehow managed to find a way of connecting. Julian talked about it a few weeks ago, that there's been all these different kind of partnerships going on between midfield and attack, and it just hasn't been working. And for some reason, well, I guess maybe, Tommy Widrington pulled a blinder last week with putting out a first team in that, in the Hampshire Cup and getting them a little bit of motivation and sort of, just rejigging things by getting so many people on the score sheet, because it really did seem to show through on Saturday. We were actually that first goal, Henry, playing a through ball, to Barham, who then squared it to Barrett. It was great seeing, Aldershot charging forward with support, because I think later in the game we also had an instance of Barrett being one on one. I mean, it was just percentages. He wasn't going to score, and then of course you also had Theo Widdrington sort of trying a shot from about 35 yards out, which was impressive, but it went wide. I mean, the fact that when they were pushing forward together, that it seemed to make a difference. Same thing with the second goal as well. When you saw it was glorious, sort of diagonal ball from Tetek out to Akpan, who then played it in, and Barham was following up. So when the ball spilled, he was there, and that's kind of what's been missing a bit in the last few games, or at least league games that I've watched. So I was encouraged, and I also and this is where I'd ask Joe about this, because I noticed at the end of the game there was quite a bit of booing from the Gateshead fans, or at least it sounded like it on TV. So I don't know whether that was sort of the general feeling around the ground at the end, because if so, then it was a really good point for us. I mean, we went up there. You guys were talking about it last week. We didn't expect to get anything, and this was the game that we thought it's a write-off. To actually be able to come back with a point against a team that's pushing up there, I think, well done.
I think, Guy, the booing I picked up on was the few Gateshead fans that had remembering back to last season and the events that went on, and a lot of that was targeted at Tommy, who was loving it and giving it saying something back as they walked through the tunnel. I as a Gateshead fan watching that game, I must say I was so impressed with how they stuck to their style. There's not many teams that play like that in the National League at all. It reminds me a little bit of back when we were managed under Gary Waddock, and we would play out from the back every single time, and it doesn't matter how much we're being pressured. That's exactly how they stuck to it the whole game. And I think if I was watching that every week, I'd be quite happy. I'm not sure if that's where the boos were directed. Maybe it was, but very, very picky fans if it was.
Yeah, I heard it because I was listening on the radio. There was picking up a fair few Geordie accents screaming at Tommy. So I think that was even before the kickoff. That was just when he walked out. They were screaming at him. So I put two and two together that the booing at the end was straight at him again, because he did keep looking across. And I think Rob Worrell said on the commentary he put like three fingers up to the. I don't know. I think it was before the game. I don't know where the three fingers were. If they're on one hand, I don't know what that means. But yeah, that was apparently what started it, I think, before the game. Julian, how did you find the game on Saturday, and taking a point from Gateshead?
Yeah, well, it was. I think you sort of hit the nail on the head with. We weren't expecting to get anything, were we, from that? But it was a superb performance. I'm really, really pleased that Tommy has stuck with the formation, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Will, but it was very similar to what we saw at Bradford, and that movement where you've got Widrington sort of just in front of the defence, then you've got the two midfielders that are sort of looking very positively forward, and. I love Tetek. I always have done, and I just hope he can maintain his fitness. And for me to have Tetek and Henry in those two positions moving forward was a real breath of fresh air. And of course, if you look at both the goals, absolute killer passes from Henry for the first one and Tetek for the second one was absolute quality, and that's what sort of undid the superb passing movements of Gateshead, as you said, Joe. And let's not forget how good Gateshead are at what they do. They for my money are the best passing side in the division for sure. And for us to be able to go there and to do what we've done, I think we should be really pleased with that. Make no mistake, we are in a relegation battle. There's no doubt about it. But if we keep doing those sorts of things, then we will be absolutely fine. Pick of the moments for me, Akpan running down the right for that first goal. A first time cross from that Tetek pass was absolute quality, and he put it right on the money, right in that danger zone. And also, I was really impressed that. Sorry, it's for the second goal I'm talking about. That Henry, I think it was Henry that got on the end of it too. There was a bit of a mix-up, and then Barham obviously followed it up. So, yeah, we've been questioning Henry's fitness levels for the last few weeks, well, probably for the whole season actually. And yet, for me, it seems like he's starting to pick up that fitness. And I take your point, Guy, with regard to the game at Bashley, which we haven't had an episode since then. And I think Tommy has made a good choice in getting the players up and running again. And of course, with Barham scoring regularly now, there's a good reason for being positive about everything that we saw on Saturday and moving forward for the rest of the season. Just one other thing I was going to mention. I obviously wasn't there, but Joe, perhaps you could just comment on the decision to put Ollie Scott in at the left centre back role. I was quite intrigued at that, and I think it was mentioned that he was tried in that position against Bashley, and it'd be interesting to see how you took that move by Tommy Widrington.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that because I wrote that down as well, Julian. When I first saw that, I was like, oh, we're playing one of the sort of best attacking sides in the league, best passing teams in the league. And I was a bit worried, but I thought the first 20, 30 minutes, he looked a bit shaky. As you can understand, it's not his natural position. But as the game went on, considering I don't think he's a natural centre back at all. I don't know how often he's played there in his career, but certainly not for us, other than, as you say, at Bashley. It's I was really quite impressed how he held his defensive line, and because that doesn't come naturally, you wouldn't have thought. So it must have put a lot of work in. And I think the only sort of time it really showed up that he perhaps isn't a natural centre half. I think it was his man for the headed Desailly goal. I think it was, but I wouldn't expect him to win that header. But overall, I think as a makeshift centre half, or perhaps that's where he'll now morph into. I don't know. I think we can get by with that. I think because with all the injuries and suspensions we've had, for him to come in and do that, hats off to him.
Yeah, I noted down also that he was beaten in the air by Oseni for the equaliser. But I did kind of immediately think, well, when I saw the replay at the time, I was like, that's what you get for putting Ollie Scott as centre half. But then I thought, well, if Harfield was in there, he's not a similar stature, but a couple of inches maybe taller.
It's a great cross, to be fair, and it's actually a really good header.
What a header!
It's a proper old school goal.
Yeah.
Other than the fact it was against us, it was I appreciated it.
Yeah, and I appreciated Tinkler smacking the bar with one of the great dipping long range shots as well. Lovely flight on the ball, straight over Dewhurst, but fortunately came off the bar. So after that, and Wokin's win over Boston at the weekend, Shots did move down to 18th place, which is such is the way with league tables, and just 1 point above the relegation places. I think we were 2 points and 17th last week. So as Julian mentioned earlier, we are broadly in the relegation battle as it stands. The only other things I wrote down were 2 goals. Obviously, that's good. No new injury concerns, I don't think. We did get 1 new suspension, which was Mag Homer totting up 5 yellows in this game. That probably brings us on to the next game, really, I suppose. Altrincham at home this Saturday. No Tuesday night game this week. And we've got suspensions looming. It's that weird time of the year where there's a cut-off after 19 games in the league. So barring James Henry, Roland Menezes and Ryan Jones, who I all believe are on 4 yellows, as long as they go through the game without getting a yellow, they won't have a ban. They'll reset to 0. And if they don't, as long as they don't get to 10 by whatever it is, 36 games, then they won't get the requisite, I think it's 2-game ban after that. So positives. And we'll have the returning Aaron Jones and Dan Ellison in for the weekend. Joe, I'm going to come to you first for the look ahead to Altrincham game. I guess probably start with the kind of lineup, but I suppose you wouldn't change anything from that starting lineup for ahead of Saturday.
Yeah, you've just teed me up to say I agree. Yeah, that I think that second half performance with the way we played, I think it's worth noting as well that or should have mentioned when we were reviewing the Gateshead game that the subs. I was saying to Ash, obviously fellow podder, at half time, at the end of the game, how effective those subs were. I think I'm not sure how many times Hargreaves hasn't started this season. Was that the first time he hasn't started? Someone might be able to let me know. But him coming off the bench at the end was really, really effective, and Gandor as well. I don't think after Saturday's second half performance that we should change it. The way we started and the way we finished, I think, was a really good way for us to set up at the moment, because it gave us that energy in the last half an hour. And I might even be tempted to. I mean, I don't think he will put Scott at centre half again because I think Ellison's back. But obviously, he might actually if Magoma is who's suspended. You did say I've forgotten now.
Yeah, Magoma. Yeah,
Magoma's suspended, so perhaps Scott will keep his place there. Yeah, honestly, my answer to that one is don't change anything. It worked, and we've changed the lineup so much this season. Please, can we for 2 games in a row try something the same?
yeah. I suppose now, yeah, as I've said that, Magoma's not going to be in that starting lineup regardless. He might think about making 3 or 4 changes to see what he can do. In terms of suspensions, looking ahead to Altrincham, their top goal scorer Regan Linney, with 9 goals so far in the league, he picked up his 5th booking at the weekend in a 2-0 win at home to Southend. So that's good. He's out. He'll be replaced by Joe Nuttall, who's on loan from Oldham. He's played 5 times, I think, so far this season, and he's yet to score. I think he's mainly come off the bench. Obviously, Regan Linney's the man. Justin Amaluza and Alex Newby, they seem to be the players that always strike fear into me every time I look on the starting lineup. But luckily this season, no Chris Clark to look on the lineup as well, who is at Peterborough. And I checked today, he's coming back from an injury. He got injured about 6 games into his career start there. He's yet to score. So, Guy, I'm going to come to you. How are you feeling ahead of Altrincham at home at the weekend?
Well, bit split really, which is I mean, what you just said about Linney being suspended, that is actually good news for us, given the number of goals that he's been racking up, and even his manager is talking about their nervousness at him starting to attract attention and potentially leaving the club in January if some EFL clubs come in, because he seems to be doing very well. So it's that helps us, I guess. But what is interesting as well about Altrincham as well is that they are very good at switching around. I mean, they do quite. If you look at the last few games that they've played, not only have they been bringing switching the players around, but they've also been switching the formation a little bit. So they've been going from a sort of a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-4-2, and they are picking up goals much more easily and more effectively than we are. I mean, in terms of form. I mean, they've scored 13 in the last 6 games against us, who've only scored 6. So, I mean, yes, Linney is their main scorer, but Newby hasn't been doing too badly himself. I mean, he's picked up 6 goals in the league and 5 assists. So even if he doesn't score, he's there, playing others into position. So we will need to keep an eye out on him. In terms of the betting, I had a quick look. I always do this before we meet up, and the odds are much more in favour of Altrincham than shots, and they seem to be shortening on Altrincham and lengthening on us. So, what does that tell you? I mean, I'm that said, after the performance we put in, I'm a little bit more encouraged. Although we didn't talk a little bit about we didn't have a chance to speak about the defensive side of things at Gateshead, because we did concede 2 goals, and of those 2 goals, I think the second was a little bit frustrating, especially as it was a cross that came across, worked across the box, and cut out 3 defenders before being sort of slotted home from very close range. We are shipping goals. and we do need to tighten up at the back, just as we seem to be finding our goal-scoring boots again.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I can see why the odds are probably shortening for an Aldershot win, but or lengthening. Oh God, I don't even know. Lengthening for whatever the bad one is. Yeah, Altrincham are 10th in the league at the moment. They're 2 points off 7th place in the playoff places. Unbeaten in the last 5, but that is with 3 draws out of those 5. The 2 wins were Southend 2-0 at the weekend, and I think they beat Fylde 5-0 a couple of games ago. Who seem to have the maddest results in this league. Really mad. The defeats and wins. Obviously, they beat us 5-2. So yeah, but somehow, I mean, minus 14 goal difference probably says it all. Filed. Anyway, Altrincham. Julian, how are you feeling about this one on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm quietly confident actually with this because Guy just mentioned the defensive issues there, but I think we've been most effective when Macoma hasn't been the central defender of the 3. And so on Saturday, this is a ideal opportunity to either put Menezes back in there, where the last 2 occasions he's played in that position, he's got man of the match performances, or the returning Ellison, who, when he's played there, has really impressed me too. So I think this is a great chance to do that. Whether or not Aaron Jones comes back in or whether he goes back on the bench, I'm hoping he will go on the bench. Not been my favourite player since he's been back in the side this season. And I think with the performance of Akpan in the last game, I think he deserves to stay in the team. So with Alty, as you said, Regan Linney is out. Linney is out, which is good news. They do tend to be a bit of a passing team. And when they last came to us, they really struggled against us. And I remember that game. I think it was 2-0, and we played really well. And they will have that in the back of their mind, I think. So I'm really confident, actually. I think we're going to be really buoyed up. I think if you look at our performances, okay, we've lost to Hartlepool and to Wealdstone recently, but there's quite a few games where we've had positive results over the last 6, 7 or 8 games, and each time we get a result, it just builds that little bit of confidence. So Jack Barham's scoring regularly now. Keep Tetek and Henry looking forward, and I'm really confident that we will get a good result on Saturday.
Yeah, that's it. And so you mentioned Akpan as well. He's another kind of forward going player, someone that can gallivant down that right hand side. I'll come back to you, Joe. I don't think I really asked how you're feeling about Altrincham at the weekend, really, and yeah, what you kind of expecting the result to be, or the way the game will pan out.
I think when we're following on from our last home game, which was, let's be honest, miserable, and we have to follow it up with a performance. It's all very well going up to Gateshead, getting a good 2-2 draw against a team that are doing well in the league. If we can't follow that up against a team like Altrincham, who, all due respects this season, look like a mid-table side, judging by their results, we cannot afford anything less than a draw, I don't think. If we win, we're looking up the table, which pulls us comfortably away from that danger zone. If we lose, we are, at this stage of the season, this many games in, we really, really are looking down. I think with the opposition, it's a huge game. If you'd asked me after the first half on Saturday how I was feeling about it, I would have said I was rubbish. But if you asked me at the end of the game, I think we've got to take that attacking confidence. And actually, looking back to the Gateshead game, you could see the confidence returning. The last 20 minutes, you could see actually we do know how to score. We've just kind of forgotten. And I think if we can take that energy and confidence of the last 20 minutes, half an hour of the Gateshead game into Saturday, with a similar lineup, not the same, as I said earlier, it's not possible to have the same lineup. It saves you editing that way. It's not possible to have the same lineup as Saturday because of the suspensions. But yeah, if we can take that confidence into Saturday, there's no reason we can't get a result. But we seem to be a drawing side this season. So I'd love a win, but it'll probably end up as a draw, I feel. 2-2 again.
2-2 again. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what the attendance will be after the last kind of home game, which was obviously Wealdstone, was a nice big bumper, 3,100. And a kind of I don't think anyone that went to that game will be likely to return so quickly. In the with the nine ending with 9 men and such. I suppose we can actually move on a little bit, as I mentioned, Wealdstone, to the FA Trophy draw, which was today on TalkSport 2. Don't know why I'm mentioning that. It was just made. The draw was made.
Sponsored by.
Sponsored by. We got drawn against Wealdstone at home. So that'll be played on the 7th of December at 3 o'clock. So hopefully a nice opportunity to avenge the 2-0 defeat. But what I was going to say was about kind of the scheduling. When you were mentioning the Joe, kind of, yeah, if we don't win this, teams might be catching us up, or we're looking over our shoulder. Obviously we've got Dagenham next Tuesday, and then we've got Saturday off, so we'll be sat kind of watching Soccer Saturday and the as it stands table as we potentially drop a little bit further, or and we can't go any higher, but we will potentially drop a couple of places. So interesting to see, yeah, what that effect it might have psychologically for the team. So Joe, what are your thoughts on the FA Trophy draw?
I'd be interested to see the attendance for that game. It's not the most appealing fixture, is it? The way we've been playing this season. I think you'd traded. You wouldn't normally say it for us in the cup with our cup runs recently, but you'd probably have traded a defeat in the trophy for a win in the league. But unfortunately, that's too late. It's not an appealing draw, is it? It doesn't make you really want to think we're going to have a great run. It looks like the sort of game where we could easily just fizzle out of the trophy. And I wouldn't normally say this, but because I'd love a cup run, I'd love to get to Wembley, but I don't know whether this season whether we need the distraction of a run in the FA Trophy. And feel free to shoot me down for saying that, but it might be a good one for a bit of rotation, a few players who need some minutes to give them a go. I wouldn't, again, like I said, I wouldn't normally say that, but the context of our season at the moment, if we're in a similar position by the time that game comes round, then yeah, it's not filling me with the most interest. Sorry to say.
No, that is your right. That is your right. I think it's easy. I mean, for me, I get swept up in the cup magic immediately. As soon as that draw was made, I was like, oh, it's got all the makings. That's what a start that'll be. Scruffy penalty win at home into the next round, get another National League team like Barnet or something. Think it's all over again. We're in January, and then we're starting to think, oh my God, well we can't not make the quarterfinals now. It's all these things. But yeah, I agree with your point. But I would say that in the other cup competition that we're trying not to mention as much, that this kind of starting lineups we're putting in there, I know partly because of how the competition's designed, but if we're putting out full strength sides for those, I feel like the FA Trophy and the money and the potential for the feel good factor in quotation marks, but I think we should be trying our utmost, and I think Tommy will be as well. I think he wants. I mean, it's basically his opportunity for silverware.
Hypothetical question, and I think it might have been York that did it a few years ago. Would you take? Now, this is a horrible question. Would you take relegation and an FA Trophy final victory at Wembley if you had to make the choice?
If I knew it was a victory before I started, I wouldn't. I wouldn't take it. I'd stay in the league. If I didn't know the victory was coming, and I didn't know the relegation was coming, I would probably look back and be like, that was amazing. Oh no, would I? I'd probably hate all the players though, wouldn't you? God, it's horrible.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the trophy final is after relegation is sorted, right?
It's a fair point.
That's a good point. Yeah. Interesting one. Guy, what are your thoughts on Wealdstone at home and your general hopes for the competition?
Well, I mean, I think you put the nail on the head, which is what I was going to say, is that I don't think we're going to be seeing any sort of disinterest from the playing staff on this, because the way that we've been going with the other cup competitions, this National League Cup and the Hampshire Cup, we're putting out full squads, right? So it's going to be, I mean, I think they're taking it seriously. So I mean, and the FA Trophy with with the history and the tradition, I mean, you wouldn't otherwise do it. So sure. I mean, the thing for me though is I tend not to. I mean, I know we went on a really good run last year, and I started, unfortunately, starting to plan my trip to Wembley. My trip back to the UK to sort of go see all the shot at Wembley, because this is all our dreams, isn't it? We're never going to see it. How long is it going to take before we actually get to Wembley? When we did actually do the 2004 playoff final, we were, where was it? Stoke, wasn't it? Yeah. So there you go. So for me, but the thing about it, the early stages of the competition, I don't really pay much attention to it until we're sort of into the new year and we're sort of a little bit more progressed. So I will take it. I mean, I'm sure it's another game as far as I'm concerned, but yeah, I want to see. I'd like them to go far, deep into the competition, and again, I can start fantasizing about flying back to the UK and joining you all at Wembley. But yeah, let's start. Let's start, and let's not do the dream just yet. But
It's the hope that kills. That's
Yeah.
what following Old Shot's all about. Yeah, obviously, as I mentioned, the kind of Dagenham game is our last game before that game, so we do have a bit of a break. I don't know. I don't know if there's maybe plans to play behind closed doors, keep the legs turning over on that Saturday, the 30th. I don't imagine there'll be a rearranged league game scheduled in. Julian, how are you feeling about Wealdstone at home in the FA Trophy?
Joe, I am going to have to shoot you on this one, I'm afraid. We'll put it really, really well, and I've written exactly the same words on my notepad. It's the hope that kills you. And I'll tell you why I think we're going to Wembley this year. I've been waiting 51 years to go to Wembley, and the Wembley final falls on my holiday to Florida this year. So you can bet your bottom dollar, literally your bottom dollar, that the shots will be in Wembley this year. And I can't cancel the holiday, unfortunately. So, but I think in all seriousness, I think Tommy is taking it really seriously. Let's be face it, he needs a few more brownie points, doesn't he? So, and as Guy mentioned earlier on, the bounce we got from the Bashley result as well helped. So I think it would be a perfect opportunity to get one over on Wealdstone. The interesting thing was the response from the Wealdstone supporters, and they were not best pleased with it at all. So that tells you that it's a good draw from our point of view. We've got everything to gain, nothing to lose from beating them, and yeah, I think it's going to be our year.
It's coming home, finally.
Can I just say, Will, I'll never be happier to have had a terrible opinion if we did get to Wembley, and I'll be the first to admit it. I'll be there.
Are you going to suggest a tattoo they're going to get?
Yeah.
Don't do it off the cuff. You're going to have to prepare one for next week.
Yeah, don't do trophy winners before we actually get to the final.
2025 trophy winners on your forehead. Love it. Oh dear. Right. That's probably all we've got time for before this Zoom cuts out. Like we cut off to Ian last week. So I'll say thank you to Julian, Joe, and Guy for coming on the pod this week.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Oh, am I back?
You're back. I can't remember where you left it. Oh my God, I got it. Sorry. I've been chasing this fucking mosquito around my room for hours and I finally got him.